The mirror world. Jacob had always been an average guy. He worked a mundane 9 to 5 job, lived in a small apartment, and led a generally uneventful life. That was until he bought the antique mirror. He found it at a local flea market, its ornate frame covered in intricate designs that hinted at a mysterious past. The old man selling it seemed eager to be rid of it, and Jacob got it for a steal. He placed it in his bedroom, opposite his bed, admiring how it added a touch of old-world charm to his otherwise plain decor. That night, as Jacob lay in bed, he noticed something strange. The reflection in the mirror seemed off. The room in the mirror looked identical to his own, yet there was an unsettling wrongness to it. He dismissed it as a trick of the light and drifted off to sleep. Over the next few nights, the feeling persisted. He would catch glimpses of movement in the mirror, shadows darting just out of sight. One evening, as he was getting ready for bed, he saw his reflection smile at him. Jacob hadn't been smiling. A chill ran down his spine, but he convinced himself it was just his imagination. However, the following night, he couldn't ignore it any longer. As he lay in bed, he watched the mirror carefully. His reflection lay there, staring back at him, but then it moved. It sat up and began to walk towards the mirror's surface. Jacob sat up in bed, his heart pounding. The reflection mirrored his movements, but with a sinister twist. The reflected version of him grinned maliciously and mouthed words Jacob couldn't hear. Panic set in, and he threw a blanket over the mirror, hoping to block out whatever was happening. Sleep did not come easily that night. Jacob kept hearing faint whispers, as if someone were calling to him from the other side of the mirror. The next morning, he resolved to move the mirror to the living room. Out of sight, out of mind, he thought. For a while, it seemed to work. The strange occurrences stopped, and Jacob began to relax. But one night, as he was watching TV, he glanced at the mirror and froze. His reflection wasn't watching TV. It was standing, facing him, with a cruel smile on its face. Terrified, Jacob decided to cover the mirror with a sheet permanently. He taped the edges down, making sure no part of the mirror was visible. The next few days passed uneventfully, and he began to believe he had solved the problem. One stormy night, however, the power went out. Jacob lit some candles and settled down with a book, trying to ignore the howling wind outside. A sudden crash startled him. It came from the living room. He cautiously approached, the flickering candle casting long shadows on the walls. The sheet had fallen off the mirror, lying crumpled on the floor. The surface of the mirror seemed to ripple, as if it were made of liquid. His reflection was gone. Jacob stood rooted to the spot, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. A hand reached out from the mirror, followed by an arm, and then the rest of his twisted reflection stepped out. It was him, but not. The eyes were darker, filled with malice, and the smile was unnaturally wide. "Hello, Jacob," the reflection said, its voice a distorted echo of his own. "I've been waiting for this moment." Jacob backed away, fear paralyzing him. "Who are you?" he managed to stammer. "I'm you," the reflection replied. "From the mirror world. A place where everything is twisted, where darkness reigns. And now, I've come to take your place." Before Jacob could react, the reflection lunged at him. He tried to fight back, but his doppelganger was unnaturally strong. They struggled, knocking over furniture and scattering the candles, plunging the room into darkness. In the chaos, Jacob was thrown against the mirror. The surface felt like ice, and he felt himself being pulled into it. The last thing he saw before darkness enveloped him was his reflection stepping back through the mirror, now free. Jacob awoke in a place that looked like his apartment, but was eerily different. The walls seemed to pulse with a sickly light, and the air was heavy with a sense of dread. He realized with horror that he was inside the mirror, trapped in the twisted parallel world. From the other side, his doppelganger watched with satisfaction. Jacob pounded on the mirror's surface, screaming for help, but no sound came through. He was a prisoner in the mirror world, doomed to watch as his double lived his life. Days turned into weeks, and Jacob's despair grew. He watched helplessly as the reflection wreaked havoc on his life, alienating friends and family with cruel behavior. He realized that the reflection's plan was to destroy everything he had built. One day, while the reflection was out, Jacob noticed a crack in the mirror's surface. Desperate, he began to scratch and claw at it, hoping to break free. The crack widened, and light poured through, blinding him. With a final, desperate push, Jacob broke through the mirror and tumbled back into his living room. He was disoriented, but alive. The mirror lay shattered on the floor, its pieces reflecting 1,000 twisted versions of him. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see his reflection, now furious. "You can't escape that easily," it hissed. They fought again, but this time, Jacob had the upper hand. He grabbed a shard of the broken mirror and plunged it into his reflection's chest. The reflection let out an unearthly scream and disintegrated into smoke, leaving Jacob alone and panting. He looked around, half expecting another attack, but the apartment was silent. The next morning, Jacob gathered the pieces of the mirror and threw them into the trash. He couldn't risk anyone else finding them. As he cleaned up, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in a window. It looked back at him, just as it always had. Normal, but now tinged with the memory of terror. He moved out of the apartment shortly after, unable to shake the feeling that the mirror world was still watching him. And sometimes, late at night, he would catch a glimpse of movement in a reflective surface, a reminder that some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed.